trip it has been. You know, this is our 230th, actually 31 deep ends. It's kind of amazing when I think about it, because that's a lot of hours of time. And I'll be honest, it's some of the fastest half hours in my week. Emerson once wrote that life is a journey, not a destination. And if you look up the title, The Journey is Our Home, I can't tell you how many people have written books by that. And I want to say that there's nowhere to go. The destination for all of us, as a pastor, I learned early, for every wedding you do, there are 2 funerals. And you know what? It sucks, but it's what is real. So I want us to understand today that not only is life a journey, but we're all fellow travelers here. And is there a destination? Well, yes, of course. And we talked about that in previous podcasts, but I'll say it again. The destination, the journey, is from fear to love. And it's an earth journey. It's a trip. It's an earth journey. And it's an individual journey. And it's the journey of the human family. You know, I love the Moody Blues, and Ray Thomas was one of the heavy ones on the deep front. He wrote a song called Eternity Road, and I am convinced that we are all walking on Eternity Road. And one of the lines of that song is, turning, spinning, Catherine wheeling, forever changing, there's no beginning. You see, where we're going, love, it's not a place. And the destination of love can only be arrived at by understanding that the journey is our home. This is the place where the paradox kisses its own ass, if you will. It's one of the places. You know, I think the paradox is kissing its own ass all over the place myself. But love is not a place. It's this quality of being life and consciousness. It's this higher process of being life and consciousness that is more of a verb. When you arrive at this place that we call love, and we don't arrive at it all at once and then we're there, we get it in little increments. But when we get our next increment of it, what we find is we're given another higher order of understanding to reach for that includes what this journey is. So today we're going to talk about this journey, that life is a trip. And I say that all the time. Life is just a freaking trip. It's just, the older I get, the more amazing it becomes, the more open I am to it. And the more I understand that the journey itself is what it is, and how we embody that journey and express it and bond with aspects of it. So here we are. The journey is our home. Bob, I'll let you go first this week. What say ye?
Well, you and I have been journeying together and apart and back together again for a lot of years. And as I was saying to you before we started today's podcast, I'm still learning things about this journey, about how individual it is, and how I used to think that if I could just show people what was going on around them, that they would think the way I did. And I realized that that is a totally futile approach, because they're never going to think like I do, because they can't take my journey. They can only take their own journey. And the sharing that we do, we've talked a lot of times about how, mystics have had these experiences and they've tried to explain them to other people, and it never comes across. People can never understand fully what someone else has experienced. And I think that is just a more extensive version of what we go through every day. Two people approach a task at work, and they're totally different views of what should be going on in that task. And somehow we have to be able to come to some kind of agreement that, yeah, you're not going to understand my viewpoint, and I'm not going to understand yours, but we've got to try and take those two viewpoints and work together with them. And I guess that is what we talk about, moving toward love, where we move toward acceptance of all of these alternative viewpoints and seeing where they're worthwhile and where we can learn and share with each other. And it's a tough journey, the journey of the individual, the journey of our species is still struggling with that, because, I mean, going from the biggest war kind of viewpoints to the average, what kind of cereal am I going to buy? It's all.
Yeah. And I want to cut in here because I want to say that what you're talking about is empathy. And we can intellectualize that and see other people having alternative views, or we can realize we are one of those alternative views and they all are equal. And at every meeting with someone different, and this is what happened in my journey, at every meeting, I saw it as a way to see a different way to see the universe. And I didn't agree with most of them. Matter of fact, you three are probably as close as I've come to anybody. But so I think that's a huge piece of the journey. And I didn't want to cut you off, but I needed to so we could.
Okay.
So we could.
I was starting to babble anyway.
Yeah. Marianne, how about you? The journey is our home. It's full of all these lessons of hardships, of heartaches, of joys, of celebrations and griefs. What say you in this?
Well, I think that when I think of the journey and versus the destination, sometimes we're focused on the destination and we miss all of the things along the road. And I think that you're right, that the ability for us to understand and have empathy with the others that are on this journey with us. And I think that's where we get into the idea of our companions and how important it is to have the right kind of companions to support us through that journey and keep us focused, not just on the destination has to be out there. We have to know where we want to go, but also be willing to take the road that may take us to a different place, explore. And we can only explore when we have the strength of communities, the strength of our companions. We can do this on our own. I've traveled quite a bit on a solitary journey. And that takes me to a place of, I want to understand what this is about. I want to understand why I'm here. I want to understand what it is that I can do in the world and in my life to, when I reach that destination, when I'm on my deathbed, I can think a life well lived.
Yeah.
And I can feel that. And to me, that's my destination. But there's a whole lot that has to happen along the way. And how do we wake up to it? How do we know?
Yeah. And you're putting your finger on a really important piece, and that's to know the difference between a goal and a destination. I think we have a lot of goals on the way. My goal is to understand, for me, these church meetings drove me absolutely bonkers. My goal was to really see myself inside that person and saying what they were saying so I could somehow get inside the intent of what they were doing. That's very different than a destination. And I think when you talk about when you get to your destination on your deathbed, I think that is it, the final wrap-up, if you will. Before you step off into the final mystery. I really think both of you are onto something when you talk about this relational piece. Because to me, if the goal is love, and love is a verb, it's not somewhere you get to and you're there. It's something you implement and make the journey even deeper into it. Because to me, once we get into that as the destination, really, and the destination is the journey. There's no way you can live in love, be there, and not be in the journey. You bring up the piece of relationship that shows that love is a bond. If there's chemical bonds and there's, life bonds, there are bonds of consciousness, and I think love is a way of talking about that. And it seems to me that it connects us in such a way that it creates an opening. And this is where the mystics come in, to see that we, Einstein said it, all sense of separation is optical delusion. It is literally like waking up from a delusion and seeing that you're not alone. And to me, that journey over and over reiterates it. I go through a process of cutting myself off and seeing myself as alone. It's my autonomy. And then something happens, an opening that shows me once again, and that opening shows me that one, I'm going to keep going through this cycle of connection and disconnect, and that each time, if I'm intentional and aware enough, I can be a little deeper in that, a little more connected when I come out of it, and a little more compassionate with my empathy. So to me, those are aspects. Go ahead, Bob.
I think that's an important point. We talk about the journey having an ending at our deathbed, but in reality, the journey is made up of many, many smaller journeys that we all go through. And, you can look at the metaphor of the spiral, so you circle back, but on a higher level and things like that. But each learning experience is sort of like a mini journey in and of itself that then enables you to pack your bags up again and get ready for the next segment of the journey.
Yeah, and I think what pops into my head is, of course, the hero's journey. But also, you're right, we do go through these continual death and resurrection. We die to who we were, and we rise again to something new. And that's a continual part of the journey. And, I was just writing about something of a trip. When we used to jump in the car to travel somewhere, if we were going to visit someone, his parents, for instance, it's an 8-hour drive. And it was all about, we're leaving in the middle of the night so the kids can sleep. It'll be a nice, we won't have to worry about traffic. We're just going to jump in the car and get there. And then coming back home, we missed a whole lot of beautiful scenery and a beautiful ride if we had done that during the day. And yet it made sense because we wanted to get there because our goal was to spend time there, not on the road. And then we took another trip where it was all about the journey. And it was a couple of weeks, and we stopped and we went. And so I think there's validity in both of those things. And it's utility is popping into my head. What the destination to me, when we're reaching a destination, it's utility. It's something that we want to accomplish. When we think about the journey, it's something we want to experience. It's something that that will enrich us and change us and help us to grow. So that's kind of where I went with that.
Well, and I think it depends on what's going on at the moment. The journey might be a nighttime journey, and that's okay. That has its own piece. There's a Buddhist saying that what we're really looking for is the seeker. We are each seeking ourselves, and at each little indication of who I am, I realize who I am is not just this cosmic address. Again, it's going back to this place that love opens in me, this place where the bond of connection seems to let me in on some kind of Rip Van Winkle sleep that I'm coming out of, that there's some indication that I really am a part of a huge net of gems, as the Hindus say it, that it's one big superordinate happening, and there really is no way to separate oneself from it. For to separate oneself from it is to not exist at all. So again, we get back to waves rising up in the ocean as a good metaphor of that. The journey is looking for ways to talk about itself. And that's part of what this time is about. This time that might go down as the age of lies. Hopefully it's not more than 10 or 20 years. We'll see. but there's a whole new reconsideration of who we are and how we are and what the possibilities of who we can become are being laid on the table in ways that are brand new and have huge power and authority in the mere fact of engaging them. And that's part of what the journey is. I said in my opening comment that the journey is not just individual, but it's the human family's journey. And that and I used this last week and when I did a show on the Bible, that the Garden of Eden is really where human beings become self-aware and they become afraid. The two trees they eat off, good and evil, and life and death. Because what kills you is bad, what helps you live is good. And we have been coming out from under that fear into love. That to me is the human journey, with all its iterations. That seems to be what we keep waking up to, this way of being bonded to each other and recognizing that we are literally part of each other. We are of the same tree, different branches. So the human journey and our individual journey are both active. I guess I wanted to just keep that in play.
Well, I think we're learning what it means to be human, and we're growing into that. And it's much more spectacular than we could ever have imagined. And I think as we start to embrace love over fear, it's going to show itself.
I hope so, Marianne.
Well, that's the story I'm telling myself, right? I would rather embrace that story than the alternative. And I don't have any expectations, and I don't have any parameters, but I'm open to exploring a mystery and trying to be present on the journey and taking what I'm learning along the way and keeping hope alive, these are times when it would be so easy to sink into despair. It would be so easy to become cynical. It would be so easy to just kind of shrink ourselves. And for me to be able to counter that, to face that fear. I mean, we were talking about bravery, to face that fear and to keep going. I want to believe that as human beings, we are capable of great love and great things.
And to be honest, I also agree with that. However, I don't think it's a sure thing in any way. And the fact that it's not a sure thing and that the human beings have it in our ability to totally destroy ourselves, that possibility of a loss is highly incentivizing for me in my journey. And it wants me to push back sometimes more than I want to or am willing to. Because even though I'm a son of a bitch, I still want some people to think of me as a nice guy. So I don't want, in my life, I can't sugarcoat it. I think that there's more to gain in the darkness than there is sometimes in the light. And that's not always the case, but in my journey it has been the case. And I've tried not to, I won't say fear because I'm scared shitless of the darkness, but in myself and in the world. But I still feel like I go there anyway. And the only light I have is myself. And I think that's part of the journey that Jung was calling us to make. And I think it's part of the journey that our time is calling us to make. And I think part of whether it's critical race theory or whatever, all of this is pushback about, resurrecting those disconnected parts of us so that we might be honest with who we are and come to a more humble presence in our expression as a human family.
Well, and I think when you go into that darkness, that's the only time that you can really realize how bright the light is, when you are in that dark. And so you're right. agree 100% that that's a necessary component, and we have to embrace it. We have to not be afraid to look at it, and then the light will shine even brighter. And I'm going with that.
And that's all the stuff we stick in that little room of forever nothing in our souls. It contains a whole lot of that, and if we start facing them, then the power of forever nothing is a little bit less in our lives, and we're able to address it in smaller quantities and qualities, if you will. Bob, what say you on all this?
Well, I'm going to go back to what I was saying before about the journey being in small parts. I just finished watching a very, very good series called Reacher. And Reacher had an older brother, and the two of them were so close. And his mother, their mother, was very, very insightful. And in the older brother, she saw someone who wanted to fix things. He wanted to always step in and make things right. And her advice to him was, you can't fix everything. Just fix a few small things along the way. And the younger brother was very in tune with what was the right way to act. And she said, you just have to trust yourself to act in the right way. And both of those two are aspects of ourselves in this journey. And they both kind of balance each other out, and both require a lot of bravery. And I just thought that was so insightful to come out of, we talk about stories.
Yeah. Oh, well, Lee Childs is one of my favorite writers. I mean,
yeah,
he's like walking home from a neighborhood
see things
bar.
that are so far beyond the immediate story that have relevance. So I think that, again, it's balancing these things on our journey, finding the small things we can do right with good intentions, and then moving on forward.
Yeah. And realize it's a trip. It's a journey. There's nowhere to be other than where you are. And it doesn't have to be glorious or big or any of that. Most of our journeys are small little places that, we live our lives quietly. No one, it's not going to make a big impact on the world when we leave. It's still real and true and big to ourselves. And I think,
as we've said many times, it's that old butterfly effect.
Yeah.
What may be a small thing to ourselves may in reality be a really big thing that we're just not aware of.
Yeah. And we can't plan those things. They happen or not. And I want to go back to something because we're getting close that Mary Ann said, and that's the hero's journey. Amen. Each of us are the hero in our own drama. I pray.
Well, and I think, talking about what the effect of all of our actions have, you're right, we can't know what those are, but we have to do them anyway. But I think there's an aspect to journey that we implied, but we haven't really said, and that's the difference between the inner and outer journey. So I think we could be going through massive, massive inner journeys, and outwardly, it's not affecting the world, or we don't know, but it's not making a big impact on the state of affairs or anything. But our soul journey, that inner place where we can rise up and become something brand new and something different, I think that is also something that at least I pay a lot of attention to.
Yeah.
Is doing that.
And Mary Ann, I think it is in that soul journey that the real connection happens. It's that we call love. It can have outward expressions, but the real connection is inside, and how we set up camp in each other's psychodramas, if you will, and how important that is to weave us together. And I think that that's part of what's going on in the planet, is we are trying to tell stories that show that all our psychodramas are part of one big thing, and we need all of us to get the full picture. And we're coming to let me double check my time. Yeah, we're getting close to to the end of our time. Bob, final comments on this? This is, life's a trip. I think my last words are going to be probably life's a trip. and burst out laughing and then die.
Well, I think the important thing for all of us to realize is that although our journeys are unique, they're no more important than everyone else's journey. And if we can put ourselves into the context of recognizing others' journeys as important as our own, then that's that empathy part that leads toward love.
Amen.
Yeah. Right.
Marianne?
And, and I think that's where we make those connections. And for some reason, what keeps popping into my head is the whole idea of the fish in the water, and that we are swimming around and we're trying to see the water. We're trying to see what this environment is and what it means. And I think at the end, I might say this has been interesting because it's something that to be open to all of our experiences, the good and the bad, the happy, the sad, and also, like you said, Bob, recognize that everyone else is going through their same journey. There's that hero's journey that's universal. We're all doing it in just with 1,000 different faces, right? And so, so smell the flowers along the way, if you can. And if not, cry a few tears and then look for flowers.
Yeah, there you go. And something you said in previous podcasts is you'll never sit in the shade of the trees of the oak tree that you plant. And plant some oak trees too. You know what I mean? We're all doing that. And Bob, you said something with the butterfly theory. We don't know what will come of the seeds we plant. And we don't even know what words we have that are actually seeds. Did someone hear that in a way that changed them? As a pastor, people come up to me and they call me everything from a saint to a sinner because of what I've said and what it's done inside their head. This whole piece, I think, is important. And, we talked a little bit about we keep going through this process of dying and being resurrected. It's almost like there's these iteration loops that are happening all the time. And within each loop of iteration, we've talked about that there's this bonding agent that can come of it called love, a connecting bond that helps us see what is already true, that we're part of something much bigger, and all sense of separation is optical delusion. I use the word waking from a Rip Van Winkle sleep, a delusion dispelled. But what is that moment of waking up? What is happening? You see, a lot of people think enlightenment means you get it, and then you've got it. When it means is you getting it, and you realize that it's a process that you're going through over and over. There are all these little dachystoscopic wakings, these little moments over and over, and they're not a big deal to somebody else. But for us, they could be life-changing. Waking up, becoming enlightened, what is that really? We're going to return to love and waking up, because waking up is hard to do. My friends, blessings. May the one be all over you, and may your soul reach for the new.